$12. That is the total heating cost for an entire winter inside this greenhouse. While conventional commercial greenhouses burn through $1,000 to $3,000 in propane, natural gas, or electricity just to keep plants alive, this one stays warm and productive with nothing more than one small propane tank or a single wheelbarrow of wood for the whole season. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to build this greenhouse yourself in a single weekend for under $500 and why almost no commercial farmer uses it. 200 years ago in Victorian England, growers built hot wall conservatories that stored the sun's heat in massive brick walls and radiated it back all night long. The same principle traces straight back to Roman hypocaust systems that kept emperors' gardens warm without electricity or fuel contracts. Today, modern versions using water barrels and simple poly covering stay above freezing through brutal winters with almost zero input. We did not stop building greenhouses that stay warm for almost nothing because they failed. We stopped because a greenhouse that costs $12 all winter is a greenhouse that does not need the energy industry. This is the story of the Victorian hot wall greenhouse. It is the greenhouse that stays warm all winter for $12, and it explains the reason farmers never built them at scale. Welcome to Builder Build. Before we open this one, if these forgotten techniques matter to you, the best way to preserve this knowledge is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these builds with those who need to remember what we forgot. 2,000 years ago, Roman emperors were already growing out-of-season cucumbers and exotic fruits in greenhouses that needed almost no fuel. They built hypocaust systems beneath the floors and inside the walls, networks of brick channels that carried hot air from a single small fire. The thick stone and tile mass absorbed that heat during the day and released it slowly through the night. Emperor Tiberius demanded fresh cucumbers every day of the year, and his gardeners delivered them using nothing more than one fire and the Earth's own ability to store warmth. Zero electricity, zero monthly bills, just physics and masonry that lasted for generations. The same idea reached its peak in Victorian England. Wealthy estates built hot wall conservatories with south-facing brick walls 3 feet thick. Some walls contained hidden flues, warmed by small fires at the base. Others relied purely on passive thermal mass. The bricks soaked up every ray of winter sun and radiated it back for hours after sunset. These structures kept pineapples, grapes, and orchids alive through English winters that regularly dropped below freezing. Picture this. You step into a 19th century English conservatory on a snowy January night. The air is still and 48 degrees, while the world outside is white and silent. You place your hand on the massive south-facing brick wall. It is warm, radiating stored sunlight like a living radiator. No heater is running, no fuel smell. Snow falls outside the glass roof while tropical plants bloom inside. The same walls worked for decades, often passed from one owner to the next without a single upgrade. Parallel versions appeared everywhere. Ancient builders trusted the ground. In Persia, Qanat tunnels cooled and moderated desert greenhouses. Early American settlers built lean-to stone wall greenhouses along barn sides in New England, banking them with earth and letting the rock hold the day's heat through bitter nights. Zero or near-zero fuel, multi-generational use. The hot wall trick worked without electricity for centuries because it was never meant to make anyone rich on monthly bills. It was simply meant to grow food. Then in the 1950s and the 1960s, as fuel prices began to bite, a quiet revival started in permaculture and off-grid circles across Europe and North America. Growers who refused to stay dependent on propane tanks started digging out old greenhouse manuals and experimenting again with thermal mass. They stacked black 55-gallon water barrels along the north wall, wrapped hoop houses in layers of bubble wrap for cheap insulation, and watched the sun do most of the work for free. Amish farmers in Pennsylvania and homesteading families in the Midwest took the idea further. They built simple lean-to greenhouses against existing barn walls, filled them with hundreds of water barrels, and used nothing but passive solar gain and stored heat to keep their starts and greens alive through long winters. Many reported total heating costs under $50 for the entire season. The breakthrough that made it mainstream for small growers arrived in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Makers began recreating the exact Victorian hot wall principle with modern materials, including cheap double-layer poly sheeting, recycled brick or rammed earth thermal mass walls, and the strategic placement of water barrels. These updated versions combined the old passive trick with affordable materials anyone could buy at a farm store. In the cold plains and mountain valleys, builders rediscovered what the Victorians knew. A simple wall and barrels turn free sunlight into free heat. The secret is brutally simple and has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. A thick thermal mass wall, built from brick, stone, or packed earth, runs along the entire north side of the greenhouse. In front of it sit 50 to 100 black 55-gallon water barrels filled with plain water. During the day, sunlight pours through the south-facing glazing and strikes both the wall and the barrels. The dense mass soaks up every available degree of free solar energy, like a giant battery. At night, when outside temperatures crash, the wall and barrels slowly release that stored heat back into the growing space. A layer of double poly film or inexpensive bubble wrap over the glazing cuts heat loss by 50 to 70%. Roof vents at the peak and low intake vents at the base create perfect convection. Warm air rises naturally, cool air is drawn in and reheated, with no fans, no electricity, and no moving parts. Here is what actually happens. When the outside air hits -10 degrees, the interior stays a steady 45 to 55 degrees all night long. In summer, the same vents automatically release excess heat, so nothing cooks. The only backup ever needed is a tiny propane heater, or one wheelbarrow of wood for the entire winter. That is about $12 total. The wall and water do 98% of the work, and the sun just tops it up. No furnace, no monthly fuel contracts, just physics, doing what it has done for 2,000 years. After 1945, the entire food system changed. America needed massive harvests fast, and the energy industry was ready to supply the heat. Industrial greenhouses exploded across the landscape, every one of them wired for propane, natural gas, or electric heaters, and backed by monthly fuel contracts. The post-war model demanded mechanical heating for one simple reason: scale and insurance. Banks, insurers, and buyers all required proof of reliable temperature control. A cheap passive system was never part of the equation. Today, the global heating, ventilation, and air conditioning industry is worth $240 billion a year. The commercial greenhouse heating market alone adds billions more through propane deliveries, natural gas hookups, electric resistance systems, and service contracts that farmers pay season after season. Every dollar in that chain depends on one fact: the structure must need constant mechanical help to stay alive. A greenhouse that stays warm all winter for $12 is not competition. It is a category error. One fewer heater sold, one fewer monthly fuel contract signed, one fewer service call ever made. A farmer growing year-round with almost nothing from the energy industry is a farmer the supply chain can no longer count on. The industrial system was never built for self-sufficiency. It was built for dependence. And this simple design breaks the entire business model in half. The International Residential Code and the International Mechanical Code contain zero prescriptive language for any greenhouse that relies on thermal mass, water barrels, and passive solar without a mechanical heating or ventilation system. There is no approved table, no checkbox detail, no pre-engineered specification that a building official can simply stamp and approve. If you submit plans for a Victorian hot wall greenhouse in most jurisdictions, the reviewer has only one option: rooted under the alternate means and methods provision. That single phrase opens the door to mandatory structural engineering stamps, soil tests, third-party reviews, and plan check fees that routinely total several $1,000s before the first post is set in the ground. Commercial insurance companies have no standard policy category for low fuel or near zero fuel designs. Most contractors refuse the job outright because there is no licensing path that protects their liability. Zoning departments treat the structure as a full agricultural building, requiring the same permits as a heated commercial greenhouse. USDA grant and loan programs almost always favor conventional designs with documented mechanical systems and fuel contracts. When the property is later appraised, the energy savings vanish completely. Appraisers price by comparable sales, square footage, and finishes, never by the fact that it stays warm all winter for $12. No conspiracy. It is a system written by the industries that sell the equipment this design makes unnecessary. Yet a narrow crack remains open in 44 states. The owner-builder exemption still allows individuals to construct their own agricultural or personal structures without hiring a licensed contractor or submitting to mandatory inspections, provided they use the building themselves. That single loophole is the only practical pathway most Americans have to build a greenhouse that stays warm all winter for $12. The proof is still standing, and still producing food right now. Many of the original Victorian hot wall conservatories in England are still operating today, more than 150 years after they were built. Restored estates and heritage sites continue to grow grapes, pineapples, and orchids through English winters using the same 3-foot-thick brick walls that once kept the snow at bay with almost no fuel. The physics has not aged a day. Modern Amish and permaculture growers took the same principle and made it even simple. In Pennsylvania, Ohio, and across the Midwest, families stacked 50 to 100 black water barrels along the north wall inside hoop houses wrapped with double poly and bubble wrap. Temperature logs from these builds show the interior holding a steady 45 to 55 degrees all winter long, while outside air drops to single digits. Total fuel used was one small propane tank, or one wheelbarrow of wood for the entire season, about $12. Hundreds of documented do-it-yourself versions now exist across American homesteading networks, with the same results repeated year after year. The design performs in the harshest climates. Growers in Colorado's high mountain valleys, Nebraska's open plains, and across Canada report identical success, productive greens, and starts through months of sub-zero weather with almost no supplemental heat. Half a world away, Chinese solar greenhouses, built with the exact same thermal mass and south-sloped principles, cover millions of acres and feed entire provinces through freezing winters with near-zero heating fuel. University studies and independent grower reports confirm the numbers: 80 to 95% heating reduction compared with conventional greenhouses. The data is overwhelming. The physics refuses to be ignored. You step inside on a -4-degree January night, and the air is still and 52 degrees. The brutal cold you just left behind cannot touch you here. The world outside is frozen and silent, but inside the greenhouse the temperature holds steady without a single heater running. You place your hand on the warm brick wall. It is radiating stored sunlight from earlier in the day. Steady, quiet, generous heat that feels like the wall itself is alive. No vents hiss, no propane smell, no electric hum, just the slow, reliable pulse of thermal mass and water barrels keeping everything alive while snow piles up against the glass. This is not theory. This is what your backyard can do in a single weekend. Here is exactly how you build it. Buy a cheap hoop house frame kit, or build a simple lean-to against an existing barn or south-facing wall. Face the entire structure due south. Stack 50 to 100 black 55-gallon water barrels along the north side, or construct a 3-foot-thick brick or rammed earth thermal mass wall. Cover the frame with double-layer poly film and add a cheap layer of bubble wrap for extra insulation. Install 2 simple roof vents at the peak and low intake vents at the base to create perfect passive convection. Warm air rises, cool air is drawn in, and is reheated automatically. Slope the floor 1 inch every 10 feet toward a gravel-filled condensate trench so moisture drains itself. Total materials and a few basic tools cost $300 to $500. Add a tiny backup stove if you want total peace of mind. Use the owner-builder exemption available in 44 states, and you skip the expensive permits and inspections completely. The build takes a weekend. The wall and barrels do the rest for the next 50 years. $12. That is still the total heating cost for an entire winter inside this greenhouse, while conventional growers burn through thousands in fuel just to keep their plants alive. Farmers don't build these not because they don't work, but because they work too well for the old business model. Over 30 years, that single design saves you more than $30,000 in heating bills. The wall and barrels do the work for free, year after year, decade after decade. If this build opened something for you, the best way to keep these techniques alive is simple. Subscribe to Builder Build right now, hit the bell, and share this video with any grower who is tired of paying for heat they don't need.